Baik, Assalamualaikum, salam sejahtera buat semua pelayar utusan online dan Kosmo Online. Hari ini saya Umar Wahid dan juga pasukan MMTV masih lagi berada di Pusat Konvensyen Kuala Lumpur bagi mengikuti rapat hari terakhir Sidang Kemuncak ASEAN ke-46. Baik, hari ini cukup bermakna buat negara kita apabila dua mesyuarat peringkat tinggi iaitu Sidang Kemuncak ASEAN GCC kali kedua berjaya dilangsungkan melibatkan 6 buah negara GCC iaitu Qatar, Oman, Bahrain, Kuwait, Arab Saudi dan Emirat Arab Bersatu. Baik, dan petang tadi selesainya sidang kemuncak ASEAN GCC China di mana buat pertama kalinya diadakan melibatkan pemimpin-pemimpin negara. Dan sekarang ini kami kongsikan kepada anda sidang media Perdana Menteri Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much for your patience. We just finished the IMTGP meeting, and I must express my gratitude for the entire team. Of course, the presence of ASEAN leaders, the GCC, and China. But I must take this opportunity to thank the Minister and Foreign Ministry, the Minister and MITI, and Economy, Finance, the Police, and all related agencies under Home Affairs Ministry for the excellent preparations and work. Now, I must say that we achieved our objective, and this is due to the support and the spirit of togetherness of ASEAN leaders, and then our first real experience with GCC, because the first inaugural meeting in Riyadh was more a formality just to introduce the program. But this time there were a series of sessions and discussions and a very, very detailed, elaborate joint statement. And then China, with the presence of Li Qiang, Premier Li Qiang, we went through some specific areas of collaboration. We will circulate the full statement. I do wish to read them, but I think even the more contentious issues like Myanmar, there was some basic understanding on tariff, on joint project collaboration, all has been agreed upon. Saya ingin menyatakan penghargaan setingginya kepada rakan-rakan pimpinan ASEAN yang menunjukkan semangat setia kawan luar biasa yang memungkinkan kita mencapai kesepakatan dalam banyak hal. Kemudian dengan GCC dan negara Teluk ini walaupun pengalaman baru, kerana pertemuan pertama 2 tahun yang lalu di Riyadh itu lebih dalam arti kata permulaan, pengenalan dan persetujuan secara umum, tapi kali ini ada perbincangan yang lebih teliti dan substantif. Begitu juga dengan kehadiran Premier Li Qiang, negara China. Tapi sebelum itu, kejayaan juga terletak pada Menteri dan Kementerian Luar yang membuat persiapan yang sangat rapi dan luar biasa, yang sangat membanggakan. Dan Menteri dan staf MITI keseluruhannya dan kementerian lain dalam negeri, ekonomi, keuangan, pelancongan. Jadi kita telah mencapai satu kemajuan dan di antara sidang ASEAN yang paling substantif dalam sejarah. Begitu juga dalam perbincangan dengan GCC, kehadiran mereka bermakna dan mereka telah menyatakan penghargaan luar biasa cara pengendalian sidang, persiapannya dan perisian kenyataan bersama. Terima kasih. Yes. No question. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Actually, my question is some international issues, which is first is 22nd. We know that some international students and scholars in Harvard University will be sent back, which influenced 6,800 students. We just now
I think we will deal it. We will deal with it. We will deal with it and at the right time. Okay, next. Because I want to confine to ASEAN, GCC, and China.
Prime Minister, I'm with China Media Group.
Yes.
I would like to ask, we've seen that report that the Sultan of Brunei is hospitalized. Is it true? Can you confirm it? Thank you.
Well, he's feeling a bit tired, so he's just resting at the ASEAN.
Prime Minister, I'm with China Media Group. Earlier on, you spoke of Malacca and highlighted Malaysia's historic position as a bridge between China and the Middle East. How can Malaysia further leverage this very unique position to strengthen this trilateral cooperation? And how do you would assess China's role today in promoting the regional development and integration within ASEAN? Thank you.
Now, I've alluded to the fact that last month was an extremely successful visit by President Xi Jinping, and now we have Premier Li Qiang, which indicates that focus, and not only to Malaysia but ASEAN and GCC. Malacca, because historically we have that center, a major cosmopolitan center and an international port that will find this engagement with both East and West, for example, very heavy with China, India, and of course international, as Tommy Pires in his account would elaborate. So I'm saying it's not something new. That is why sometimes when people talk of globalization, they refer to only the impact of or an influence of the West. It's not necessarily so. If you understand history, then you realize the 1454 journey of Admiral Cheng He, and then we have Malacca. I think Cheng He's visit to Malacca were about 4 or 5 times, I'm not sure, so not certain, but then you can sense that sort of engagement. So I think now we have new leadership in ASEAN and in the Middle East, but more so all in China. They have realized that we should work and strengthen that collaboration, mainly focusing on the economy and to secure peace in the region. Right?
Hi, Datuk Seri. Hi, Datuk Seri.
Yes.
Vignesh from Perdana. So, Datuk Seri, I would like to ask on the Timor-Leste status after a few days of deliberation and various level meetings, because earlier the Prime Minister was giving candies to the media personnel.
The accession to ASEAN, you mean?
Status of Timor-Leste.
Well, Timor-Leste was considered. Of course, we have been working very hard. There were parameters and pillars that need to be met: political, economic, and legal. And they have tried very hard. Malaysia and a number of Indonesia and a number of countries have assisted in many possible ways to ensure that they meet these preconditions set up consistently even prior to this for any entry into ASEAN. And I would say that we are quite satisfied. So the decision was clearly to agree that they would be accepted as a full member by the next session in October. But of course, subject to 1 or 2 actions or reform to be undertaken, particularly to fulfill 1 or 2 conditions on the economic pillar. But the decision, the consensus was that we'll do whatever is necessary to ensure that they come in by October into ASEAN as a full member. I think that is also in the statement. Yeah. All right?
Datuk Seri, from the Associated Press. Just two short questions. Number one, is ASEAN planning to launch FTA talks with GCC? And number two,
Planning to launch what?
FTA talks. And number two, there are some views that
The
ASEAN
first question, the answer is yes. Yeah. Second?
that ASEAN seems to be tilting towards China with more partnerships and alliances. What's your view on this?
There's been this perception all along. That's why I made it clear in my original statement to the ASEAN leaders that on the after the recommendations by the foreign ministers in their first meeting in January in Langkawi is to continue to engage both with the United States and China, at the same time with other countries. But so following that, I wrote to President Donald J. Trump to say that the foreign ministers, on the recommendation of foreign ministers, we agree to proceed with United States ASEAN summit. That was written. Then we have this ASEAN GCC China summit. So I don't think it's tilting in any way. I mean, if it's tomorrow, I receive a letter from President Trump to say, yes, we'll have a summit in June, or no, June is too fast, but then the next few months, we don't have a problem. But what is the ASEAN position? Its centrality. What is the focus? Welfare, well-being of our people, economic relations, trade, investments. So if it means working with the Chinese, yes, we'll do. The United States, yes, we have to, because as you know, Malaysia in particular is considered to have become the hub for semiconductor, and over 60% of our exports are to the United States. It makes a lot of sense to continue to engage and have reasonably good relations.
One last question from the media.
I'll try one more time. Datuk Seri, Jan Hino from AFP. Perhaps just a forward-looking question. I think my colleagues have asked most of the other questions that I wanted to ask, but perhaps just a forward-looking question. Can you give us an idea what your expectation is when ASEAN meets again in October? What would you like to see at that point have happened, and what are your expectations for the next meeting? Thank you.
Thank you. You know, this experience, due to the work of many of our officials and then translated into this sort of recommendation, is quite unprecedented. Things that normally would be deliberated or discussed in October has been done now. And we are moving forward. That, I think, to my mind, is a major change. Even on the issue of Myanmar, the consensus to continue to engage, and now we have gone to a stage where both parties are now in consultation, although at the lower key level, and to just focus on prolonged ceasefire or expanded ceasefire, then, or extended ceasefire, I'm sorry, then humanitarian assistance, and then proceeding with the initial discussion, but subjected to or confined to the broad parameters under the 5-point consensus. All right? Now, to me, it is certainly not a departure, but major progress in terms of getting them in. Timor-Leste, for example, after being protracted sort of negotiations with terms and no real consensus, but this time, finally, we reach a consensus. On tariff, for example, while proceeding with bilateral negotiations, Zafar was there in the States, but the consensus was to have some sort of understanding amongst ASEAN that this decision should not be at the expense of any other country. So we will have to protect the turf of 650 or 660 million people. So I think, to me, is a major progress. Now, from there, of course, the ministers, various ministries and the officials will have to work on what can then be affected in terms of real implementation of programs by October. Now, if you see the spirit, the ASEAN consensus and determination to be, I of course participate a long time ago and recently, these last 2.5, 3 years, I've never seen such a plain, strong commitment. There's no choice. There's we must take whatever is necessary. FTAs of GCC, FTA with EU, economic, intra-ASEAN trade. Everybody admit something more to be done, more concrete. So by October, we want to see results. At the same time, we have PREGA, and then we have IMTGT. I mean, all these are being discussed, not in terms of pronouncements, but to affect real change would benefit our ordinary person. And I really sense this as a huge, dramatic change in terms of attitude. We want it done, and everything must be in the name of ASEAN. I mean, people talk about, even South China Sea was discussed in the Code of Conduct. And we can see this exchanges even between the Philippines and Premier Li Qiang. Sometimes through me, but sometimes directly. I'm not saying that all issues can be resolved now, but at least there is real, meaningful, positive engagement. And that is the new spirit of ASEAN. I am personally, of course, excited because I can see this more seriousness. Because otherwise, we talk about cohesiveness, to working together, but in terms of intra-ASEAN trade, in terms of making common decision to protect our turf in ASEAN, in geopolitical issues, sometimes we do not necessarily share. People have their own national agenda. But not this time. They say, yes, we can go on the bilateral meetings, we can continue with bilateral engagements, but never, ever sacrifice the interest of the ordinary person and the interest of ASEAN as a whole. Terima kasih, maraming salamat, kamka, sesek, nandri, lagi apa? Arigatou gozaimasu.
Thank you, Menteri.